Well, a good Wednesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Got lots to talk about weather-wise as we continue to get new reports and new data in from the past two severe weather systems that have come through. So I'm going to update you a little bit on what we know as of now. We are very likely going to get more information as we go into the afternoon today, once the National Weather Service can confirm with 100% certainty about what exactly occurred this past Monday. But then we'll talk about what's in store as we go into the end of the work week and head into the weekend. It is going to be nothing but good news as we head into the weekend. Go ahead and give you a bit of a spoiler. And we are finally going to get rid of some of these frigid cold temperatures that we have had over the last two mornings. So first things first, let's go ahead and recap some things with our severe weather. We do have more confirmed and kind of finalized details with last week's severe weather system. So first things first, let's talk about the paths of some of our specific tornadoes that have been confirmed. Once again, this is as of last Thursday, March 12th. The first one that touched down was down in Macon County, and this was the strongest of any of them that have occurred over the past week. This was an EF2 just to the north of Marshallville. So right here into kind of the north and northeastern quadrant of Macon County. It went over areas like Sleepy Hollow Road over here to the northwest of downtown. And then you can see it progress farther over to the east across Georgia Highway 49 and made its way over to Camp John Hope Road over there pretty close to the St. Louis area in Macon County. These are very localized areas, of course, but this did have its fair share of damage. And just looking at some of the damage reports and the PDFs and the photos that we have seen online, very, very drastic. So continuing to keep all of those folks, especially down here in the trailer park, that we did see a lot of homes damaged and a lot of families that have been displaced from those homes. We are going to continue to keep you in our thoughts and prayers. And obviously let us know here at Channel 13 if we can do anything to help out. So here's the next one that popped up in Bibb County. That one popped up just around the vicinity of kind of western Bibb, I would say, closer to Lake Tobisoffke and Lake Wildwood, which is where we first saw that rotation signature as of last Thursday morning. And you can see once we zoom in that this tornado did take a path directly over 475. So areas like Tucker Road, that's going to be where you see Georgia 361, touchdown just down to the south and the southwest of Stratford Academy. There's Lake Wildwood up there in the top left of your screen. It touched down just to the east of Windy Hill Drive, and then it made its way over 475, over the Tucker Road area, McManus Road, and made its way all the way over to around North Mumford Street before finally dissipating as it made its way kind of right there directly behind the Covenant Academy area and getting pretty close to areas like Ayers Road. And then, of course, if it were to continue over to the east, which we'll talk about in just a second, you will see some maybe more recognizable landmarks, but hopefully Stratford Academy, Covenant Academy, and these areas over here in West Bibb like Lake Wildwood are going to be some pretty substantial landmarks that you are recognizing where this did go. If you go down a little bit farther to the south, that is going to be the Thomaston Road exit right there where Mercer University Drive does go over 475 as well. But then we had one touchdown on the Peach and Houston County line. So I'm taking a bit of a broad view right here to kind of point out some locations, and you can see the path right over here where these little triangles are and the green swath is going to be. This is going to be just to the south of Buc-ee's. In fact, one exit down to the south on I-75 of Buc-ee's. Here's the Miami Valley area. And of course, if you keep going west down 96, there's Fort Valley, there's Peach County High School, and then you can see Central Georgia Technical College. That is pretty close to where our Skycam was, which we did have a time-lapse video of this tornado-warned storm coming through. I know this area like the back of my hand. This is pretty close to where my house is. In fact, we were within the swath of where this tornado did go over. So I'm able to get some very specific locations right here. Number one, touching down just to the west of Lakeview Drive. And then there's a little bit of a subdivision right here where we did have some damage, some downed trees. And there is obviously a little lake right here that you do drive past if you're going down to the south on I-75. Then it went over I-75, crossed over where Supersod is going to be on the south side of Highway 96. And then here is going to be where Ponderosa RV Park is, kind of just over across from where Supersod is. And it really went parallel right along Highway 96, right by the Dollar General, right by some pecan orchard over here on the north side of 96. And then you get over to the Highway Haven, the intersection of Highway 41 and Highway 96, crossing over into the southern portion of the Brantley subdivision, but just north of areas like Royal Oaks, Magnolia Hill. And then if it continued its easternmost push, it would have made its way over here to this more commercialized area of Highway 96, kind of where a lot of those new apartments just got built behind Lowe's. Then you have Lowe's, you have the movie theater, you have some shopping centers over here, as well as commercial businesses like the Taco Bell, like the Arby's, like the Huey Magoo's, Wild Wing over there. So very thankfully it did dissipate in a pretty heavily wooded area that is going to be kind of right there behind the Brantley subdivision, but it didn't make its way over to areas like the intersection of Lake Joy and 96 or over to other areas along Cohen Walker Drive. And then we had one more confirmed over the course of this past weekend that kind of got brushed under the rug. They did do some damage surveys up in the Milledgeville area and confirmed an EF0 touchdown in Milledgeville, just over to kind of the west and northwest of Allenwood, across areas like Blandy Hill Road. I believe Blandy Hill Elementary School had some reports of some damage, and then it crossed over into the east and went over Georgia Highway 22, crossed over 441, and just on the northern side of the Milledgeville proper area, pretty close to the campus of GCSU. And it did dissipate as it made its way over here to the Oconee River just off to the east. So that was an EF0 that we did get confirmed over the course of this past weekend. Don't know if we've done too much coverage of this, but I did want to report that this one did touch down as of last Thursday morning as well. So that is 4 confirmed tornadoes as of Thursday, March 12th. And this one was the latest one to touch down around 7:25, only on the ground for 3 minutes. It dissipated around 7:28. And it's rating an EF0, 75-mile-per-hour winds, but it was on the ground for about 3.5 miles. Pretty similar path length to what we did see with many of the other confirmed tornadoes, the EF1 that we did see in Bibb County and the EF1 right there on the Peach and Houston County line. It did cross Highway 441, like I said, went through the northern portion of the Milledgeville proper area. But obviously, it was a very active morning, and this was the weakest of any of those 4 tornadoes that did touch down last Thursday. And then we welcomed in another severe weather system as we went into this past Monday. So these are preliminary paths. What this means is this is kind of initial guessing right now where the path of the possible tornado did go. Right now, we're anticipating all these that I'm about to talk about to be of the EF0 nature. We are still working with the National Weather Service to absolutely 100% confirm this data because there's a lot of damage points and a lot of damage reports they've received. Some of them line up with maybe tornado damage. Some of them maybe line up with more so some straight line wind damage. But I did put a pause point right here to kind of show you a broad view once again about where this will be. This is Monroe County. Areas like Stroud's getting into the Culloden area. Then you go one county up to the north. This is going to be Lamar County and then over here in Upson County. So this is where the tornado is going to be just around the Yatesville area. This is over to the southeast of the Rock and directly over to the east along Georgia Highway 74 of downtown Thomaston, smack dab in the middle of Upson County. So right now, the general thinking is that this this preliminary tornado path right now kind of went directly down to the south of Georgia Highway 74. And it looked like it was going to make its approach into the Yatesville area, but it was just outside of it, kind of down to the southwest of it. Wish I could give you some more landmarks, but when I do not have too many landmarks, that's not necessarily a bad thing because that does mean that more than likely, it's a fairly rural area, but this is the preliminary path that we're looking at as of right now. We'll grab the file and put it in the graphic to give you a more specific picture once it is 100% confirmed. And then the one up here in Bibb County, the tornado-warned storm that we have seen our fair share of damage with. So obviously you get a very broad view of the entire Bibb County area. But remember that one we were talking about last week, touchdown just to the south of Lake Wildwood, crossed over 475 into western Macon. Well, this one, not too far off. In complete honesty, if this does get confirmed as of the path, then it is really picking up. It looks like this tornado might have touched down almost exactly where the other tornado did dissipate. So kind of continuing the path of the other one just about 4 days prior. Does look like it touched down just off the Forsyth Road area to the east of Napier Avenue, kind of to the northeast of the Payne City area, and then went across areas pretty close to the Ingleside Village, Ingleside Road, and then you go all the way over here to Riverside Drive, getting over to the I-75 exit pretty close to Amerson River Park. In fact, it does look like it went over the Ocmulgee River, areas really close to Amerson River Park, and then it dissipated as it made its way into kind of a heavily wooded area. And this is what we kind of did see where the rotation did lose its steam, but we were keeping a very close eye on it, because if you go over to the east where you do see Northeast High School, that's getting pretty close to us here at the station at 13 WMAZ. So very thankfully we didn't watch that continue, and it did dissipate in a pretty heavily wooded area over there by the Ocmulgee River. So that's what we have as of right now, and about 15 minutes before I got ready to pop up here on the stream, we actually got some damage reported of a possible another EF0 down in Dooley County on Monday. So if all of these get confirmed in the past week here in central Georgia, that would mean 7 confirmed tornadoes from 2 severe weather systems, obviously getting our severe weather season off to quite a good head start, but it does look like we are going to hit a bit of a lull in that activity. And again, we will confirm all of this data that the National Weather Service has given us throughout the day. We want to get the official 100% certainty that these are going to be of the tornadic nature, that these were tornadoes that touched down, but that is not the case as of right now. So these are preliminary, what I was talking about with Monday's data. So here's a look at your headlines. Going up the temperature ladder over the next couple of days, we have finally hit the bottom of the roller coaster. So the only way to go from here is going to be up. Chilly mornings will continue. Don't get me wrong, but they're not going to warrant anything in the way of freeze warnings like we have seen the past 2 days. And a spectacular weekend is looking to settle in as we go into your Friday and your Saturday and your Sunday. Here's a walk around the quad. Some high-level clouds in the forecast, creating some partly cloudy skies, I guess you could say, but still there's plenty of sunshine that continues to break through downtown Dublin, downtown Macon, over by the Georgia National Fairgrounds, and getting over here off Cohen Walker Drive in Warner Robins. Down here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds, you can see that the flags are blowing from right to left. Camera view is frozen obviously right now, but that is indicating a bit of a northerly component with your winds. There might be a light breeze out there. Overall, we're not talking anything nearly as gusty as what we've seen the last couple of days. But also, it's a pretty busy picture here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds, and that's because they are kicking off the RV Expo. I believe it is today, or maybe even getting into tomorrow over the course of this weekend. So you can still see where there are some lingering impacts from the frontal boundary that passed through, and that is going to be mainly in the far eastern United States. It is definitely pretty substantially colder up to the north of us. 38 degrees in Charlotte, 37 in Virginia Beach, still sitting at freezing temperature in Washington, D.C., and then a 31, 1 degree below freezing temperature in Indianapolis. That's the coldest number that I can spot across the eastern United States. As you go back over to the west, you are starting to see some warmer and some more humid air filter back into the southern plains, state of Texas, and eventually pushing up into areas like the Missouri Valley and the Mississippi River Valley. But down here in the southeast, it looks like we have a bit of a wedge set up right now. You can see these winds going going clockwise up here, pretty close to the Washington area. That's going to indicate a center of high pressure, and that high pressure is creating those clockwise winds that are trying to funnel in some of that cooler and drier air down to the southwest. But once they get down into the Gulf, they are taking a turn back inland as you get to the Gulf Coast of Texas, and that's where we are starting to see that air mass pick up more humidity and some warmer air that is filtering into coastal Texas, and that's making its way back up into that portion of the deep south portion of the country. But it is still a pretty chilly forecast that we see here over to the east. Speaking of our current temperatures, 43 in Macon. It is definitely a chilly environment, and it's going to basically be like that all throughout today, so go ahead and get used to some chilly numbers. But we do see some 50s farther to the south and down to the southwest. For the most part, we are scattered about the 40s and one lone upper 30s still as you get into upstate South Carolina all the way in the Greenville area. Here in central Georgia, low and mid 40s are going to be the story. 42 at the lowest across Wrightsville, Sandersville. Don't think I even spot another 42. But at the warmest, I see a 46 down in Vidalia, and I also don't think I spot another number that's going to be warmer than that. Check that with the 42s. I do spot another one over there in Forsyth. So 42 to 46. Basically, everyone in central Georgia is around the same temperature range of about 4 degrees. The winds, there is a little bit of a breeze. Like I said, there is a little bit of a northerly component, as we did see with that image of the flags down at the Georgia National Fairgrounds facing out to the west. I would say maybe a breeze up to around 5 to 8 miles per hour at the most. but overall that's not going to have too much of a factor throughout today. But as of right now, currently it is still keeping some of your feels like temperatures down below the 40-degree mark, but it is, once again, not too far off what the actual numbers are sitting at. So some high-level clouds that are pretty widespread. We did kind of see a very thin sheet of white, but once again, not doing a very good job or a very substantial job of blocking some of your sunshine here as we approach the midday hour. There is some active weather up to the northwest of us, back over into western Tennessee, maybe getting into portions of northwest and northeast or northwestern Alabama and northeastern Mississippi. And there's more cloud cover back over there to the west, which may come down and interact with our forecast a little bit. Don't be surprised if you see your fair share of some passing clouds today, tomorrow, all the way into Friday. But we have no moisture in the forecast. So whatever system does try to clip through, clip is honestly kind of a funny word that I use right there because it is indeed a clipper system, the very southerlymost component of it. It is not going to have any moisture to work with, so we're not looking at anything in the way of rain chances. It's just going to be a story of some on and off clouds throughout the next couple of days. 53 for a high temperature yesterday, 30 degrees for a morning low temperature yesterday. We were 3 degrees above the record of 27 and obviously well off the record of 88 for the high temperature set back in 1945. So your averages this time of year, 71 degrees for a high and 45 degrees for a morning low temperature. Your departure of rain, I did tell you that we're not going to have much in the way of rain chances yesterday, so go ahead and expect this number to go farther down into the negative category, unfortunately. And sunrise, 7:42, sunset at 7:44. That is going to be important because yesterday was not only St. Patrick's Day, it did mark the first day that we are going to have hours of daylight being longer than hours of nighttime. So daylight hours yesterday, just over 12 hours and around 2 minutes of daylight. And that will continue to get longer and longer and longer as we go all the way into the summertime frame eventually. So I did edit up this graphic about the next important dates to look out for. April 9th, that is in fact going to be one of the first days of the Masters tournament, if you need a quick reminder about when that might be, but also about 5 days after the Easter holiday. 4 days, actually, as a matter of fact. Easter is going to be on April 5th. That is going to mark the first time we will have an 8 p.m. sunset once again in daylight saving time. Hours of daylight, pretty close to around 13 hours of daylight as we roll into just about 10 days into the month of April. Well, 10 days after the 9th, we go into the 19th. And I marked this date because it will mark the last 7 a.m. sunrise we will have until we get all the way into August. So the sunrise is going to be before 7 a.m. all the way from April 19th into August 22nd, I do believe. And speaking of the 22nd, June 22nd is a day to have on your radar. This is obviously a good deal away, about 3 months away. However, that is going to mark the latest sunset that we do have all year. And the sunset's going to be at 8:46 p.m., virtually 9 o'clock sunset as we go into June 22nd, which is actually one day after the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year in terms of hours of daylight. So once we get into June 22nd, we are going to watch the hours of daylight get less and less and less all the way until the first day of winter, which will be a couple days before Christmas. But nonetheless, 8:46 p.m. for a sunset, we are really going to soak up a lot of that daylight with 14 hours of it as we go into right in the smack dab middle of the summer. But a ways to go before we start talking about summer weather, and that is obviously not on tap for today. 59 for a high temperature. Compared to average, we are definitely below where we should be this time of year. And it is on the chilly side, but it's not quite as bad as yesterday. 53 was your high temperature for St. Patty's yesterday, and the winds are going to be calm today as opposed to the breezy conditions that probably made those low 50s feel just a little bit cooler. This makes me pretty confident hour by hour. It says we warm up to 56 as we roll into the 5 and 6 o'clock hours. I think this graphic got to 51 yesterday. We recorded a high of 53, so I think we're going to be around 2 to 3 degrees warmer than what this graphic does say as we go into this afternoon, hence why my high temperature is a little bit above what the graphic does say. So passing clouds throughout the rest of today. As we go into tomorrow, it is the same story, different day. Going all the way to Friday, I'm just going to zoom through future view because there's nothing to talk about besides this cloud cover, nothing in the way of any sort of rain chances. We were talking about actually Thursday night, overnight into Friday morning, that maybe there could be a few spotty shower chances. that's not even within the picture of future view anymore. It looks like our dry atmosphere is going to really take over and really inhibit those rain chances over the next couple of days. So it's going to be a story of the numbers. You're just going to want to know how it feels outside at certain points of the day. And my best piece of advice over the short-term forecast as we wrap up the work week is dress in layers. Because yes, we are not going to be below freezing tomorrow. We are not going to be near below freezing on Friday, but these are still going to be some chilly numbers that you'll walk out the door to. So have some layers ready for the morning commute, but the afternoon, tomorrow, and especially on Friday, feel free to shed those layers because we are finally going to welcome back some spring-like temperatures. 68 degrees, that's a little bit below average, but it is getting back pretty close to normal for where we should be this time of year. And then once we get into Friday, 76 for a high temperature. And not only is it going to be very appropriately so for the first day of the spring season, astronomical spring that is, it is also the first day of the Cherry Blossom Festival, hence the big pink box and the cherry blossom icons on there. 76 as we head into the afternoon. Maybe you're wrapping up the work day. Well, I would highly recommend going out to all the cherry blossom events that we do have Friday evening because the temperatures are going to feel quite amazing. Might get a little bit chilly as we go into the evening hours, but we'll talk more about that once we go to your morning low temperatures here on the next graphic. First things first, afternoon highs, they just continue to climb. 50s today, 60s tomorrow, 70s on Friday, and then 80s are back as we go into Saturday and Sunday. Each day in the future is going to feel better than the previous one, continuing to get more and more spring-like, maybe even borderline early summer-like as we go into the end of the weekend on Sunday. So while your temperature yesterday, it was 18 degrees below average of 71 degrees. By the time we wrap up the work week, we are going to see a high temperature 13 degrees above average of 71 degrees. Quite a case of weather whiplash and quite a case of just feeling like different seasons here in Central Georgia. That's what we typically get when we're kind of in that transition period between two different seasons, especially two as different as spring and winter here in Central Georgia. 27 for a morning low today. Don't think we quite got that low in Macon. Maybe 28 was around our lowest temperature. We'll figure it out on the almanac as we get that data recorded later this afternoon. But 34 for a morning low tomorrow. That's definitely still pretty chilly. 42 still on the chillier side of things. But then finally we get into Saturday and Sunday, 52 and 56 degrees. So our temperature Friday evening is going to begin the decline as we go into the nighttime hours, into the early morning hours on Saturday. From somewhere, say, around 76 for a high temperature, down about 20 to 25 degrees into Saturday morning, where you walk out to a number of 52. Might get a tad bit chilly, might be good enough for some light layering if you are venturing out and about, but I do think those morning low temperatures get more and more pleasant as we head into the weekend. So now what are we going to pair those numbers up with? Are we going to welcome back rain chances as we go into the weekend? My short answer is no. I'm still not seeing anything on these long-range models that looks really definitive of anything in the way of rain chances. You saw a couple of those blobs popping up to the north of us as we go maybe Saturday night into Sunday. I don't expect any of that rain to come to fruition, but maybe as we go into Sunday, we might quite have enough, or we might finally have enough at least warm temperatures and maybe enough moisture back in the forecast to sprout a pop-up shower that's really going to be of the lighter nature. As we go into Monday, I think this is going to be where your next impressive rain chance is. And it's not looking impressive whatsoever as we take a look at all these splotches of green and blue. I do have confidence in one thing. The rain chances and maybe even the thunderstorm chances into South Carolina and North Carolina are looking better than what we do have here in the state of Georgia. But it does look like this is going to be something in the form of a frontal boundary that passes through, and that will create maybe something in the way of maybe a severe weather chance or just a general thunderstorm chance in areas over to the east and the northeast of us. But it doesn't look like that really comes to fruition in the state of Georgia. So what I would do is, if you are trying to prepare for maybe when our next organized rain chance could be, Monday has the potential to, but it's not really looking too impressive as it currently stands. Not to say that it couldn't when we get our next couple of model runs in, because that's exactly what we saw with this past Monday's system. We were looking at it maybe even as soon as 4 to 3 days out ahead of time. It didn't look like much in the way of impressive rain chances, especially in the way of impressive storm chances. And by the time we went into last weekend, we definitely saw all of that change with those long-range models. So take it with a grain of salt. I typically show you these long-range models even when I get the time to do so within the morning, just to kind of give you the next heads up about when that next rain chance could be. Right now, go ahead and put it in the back of your head. Mark it on your calendars that it could be Monday into next Tuesday. And then as we progress all the way into the midweek next week, we could be warm enough to sprout maybe a couple of pop-up showers, but I don't see anything that is really organized necessarily in the way of rain chances. And as it currently stands, the back half of your 7-day forecast just has some 10 and 20% chances of rain scattered about it. So we will continue up the roller coaster. We are definitely the temperatures, are continuing to act like they're getting on the on-ramp as they go onto the interstate. 27 for a low today into 84 as we go into a high temperature on Sunday. That is a temperature difference of nearly 60 degrees. Yes, a lot of temperature fluctuation, definitely having to utilize different areas of your closet, whether it be your summertime clothes or it's going to be more so your winter clothes for this morning, this afternoon, and as we go into tomorrow morning. Going to be beautiful on Friday. Cannot wait for that first day of spring and the first day of Cherry Blossom Festival and opening weekend itself. I think all plans are going to go on without a hitch. It is going to be absolutely spectacular, but we could welcome in some scattered shower chances as we go into next Monday. And it does look like that frontal boundary that does try to pass through. It does result in a slight cool down, but nowhere near as substantial as what we did just see between Monday and going into yesterday. So a high temperature of 81, we might bounce back down into the upper 60s, the low 70s for high temperatures on Tuesday. That's still right there around where we should be this time of year. And I do anticipate a pretty quick warm up as we go into the end of next week. And then we're going to have to start talking about, say, the end of the month of March, which let's go ahead and give you a bit of a sneak peek preview. This is once again just kind of a general guess, but it does look like we have a decent probability of seeing some above normal numbers as we go into the last 6 to 7 days of the month of March, 25th through the 31st. Then we are going to cross over into April, and I imagine April is just going to continue to have some warmer numbers in the forecast as your average temperatures will continue to climb. But we are looking ahead. First day of spring and Cherry Blossom Festival, the first two things immediately on the radar. That's a very fluorescent yellow I just noticed. I probably am going to have to change that color. That kind of hurts my eyes just looking at it. Getting into Easter Sunday, 18 days away until we get into Easter Sunday, and then Easter Monday, of course, will be the following day. Maybe some of you have off of work and maybe even possibly school as we go into that time frame. And then the Masters going to be a couple days after Easter Sunday. That is going to be on the following Thursday, 22 days away from that. I have a lot of fun graphics that we'll get to showcase during that time frame, and I obviously will be wearing my Masters tie that I got a couple years ago pretty frequently as we go into that week. So a lot to look forward to. This springtime is just this graphic, I guess, rather, I should say, not even touching the surface of everything that we have going on event-wise here in Central Georgia. Cherry Blossom going to go on over the course of about 10 days. We'll have so many more spring festivals, whether that's going to be strawberry festivals, the watermelon festival as we get closer into the summer down in Cordele. So continue to be on the lookout for all of those events that we will post on 13WMAZ.com. Dogwood Festival, I believe that's actually the same weekend as the Masters down there in Perry. In downtown Perry, if you have not visited, I highly recommend checking it out. It is a beautiful, beautiful city that is continuing to do some pretty cool things and showcase some new restaurants and shops and things like that. But enough babbling on about that. It's going to be a relatively calm stretch of weather, and I think we have definitely earned that over the past week or so here in Central Georgia, which brings me to my next point. Thank you so much for continuing to stay updated with us on the 13 WMAZ weather team through these past two severe weather systems. We have a break right now, and we're going to soak it up as long as it lasts. However, it is still severe weather season, so we're going to continue to keep our eyes peeled on what the next severe weather system could be, when it could be coming in, and we will be letting you know as soon as we get some confidence in maybe another severe weather risk. And of course, during the entirety of it, just like we did Monday and just like we did last Thursday, we will keep you covered warning by warning as it goes all the way through Central Georgia for whatever is to occur. So thanks for tuning in for a look at your extended forecast. Enjoy this beautiful stretch of weather, but make sure to continue to bundle up the next couple of mornings. Still not quite getting rid of that chill until we finally get into the weekend and we welcome back the 70s and 80s for highs, and then the morning lows do get a bit more pleasant in the 50s. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m.